I organized the 8 bullets of the teaching practicum Fall Seasonal Developmental Emphasis into the 3 TSS graduate program frameworks. I then explore benchmarks, instructional insights, and struggles experienced through story. In my opinion, student management, positive learning environment, and field science teaching techniques fall under the TSS graduate program framework of intentional culture and educational approach. A benchmark for me in these 3 categories are in the following 3 examples. At the beginning of the fall practicum, a student management goal of mine was to institute a call and response system. A struggle with this was the lack of execution on my part. An insight was even though a teacher says their students don't need this system, I am now empowered to forego that advice and introduce it as a personal teaching style, working with the students to make it something that we both agree on. Prime examples: my folly to enact this with Arapahoe Middle, where I struggled to get students' attention during lessons and transitions from activity to activity inside the classroom and in the field. When briefing with their classroom teacher, I was told they, as middle schoolers, were old enough to tune in on their own. My big success was with L.A. Carson. I would call, "Yo, yo, yo." They would respond, "Hey, hey, hey." I introduced the call response as how I, their instructor, does things, and worked with them to find something they found silly and enjoyable, without seeking input regarding call and response from their teacher at all. Creating a positive learning environment was rooted in my student management as well as maintaining the 5 components of a PLE. But to highlight a benchmark struggle and insight, let's look at my first outreach experience with Lander High School. Number 2 on the PLE list, security, was jeopardized when in the morning we headed to a warming hut that was locked when we got there. The following hour or so was spent playing games, initiating a lesson, and mostly reassuring the students we would get indoors and out of the cold soon. We sent a chaperone to go get the keys. My insight here is that going over the plan down to the detail, while monotonous, could save you an hour away from the elements. For field science teaching techniques, nothing beats genuine interest and a teachable moment on the trail. When L.A. Carson came to TSS, our vision of instruction and craft of lesson planning was well practiced, and we not only adapted to changes in the field and adverse weather, we also introduced the SCAR community in a way that was memorable and impactful. From event maps to the personal whiteboard, our skills as instructors were at their peak at the end of the fall. Not only were we teaching environmental education, but we also coupled many team building and group cohesion activities, helping reinforce social emotional learning as well. The challenge hike up to Coyote Rock was an individual and group growth moment I am sure will not be forgotten anytime soon. I see introduction to lesson planning and reflective practice as falling under intentional community and community leadership. From my time with the kindergartners at Aspen Elementary, I took away the importance of lesson planning. For even when the day's plan changes, for example, from an outdoor day to indoor, or say an overlooked hour at the end of the day pops up at lunchtime, talk about instructional struggle, the lesson plan is your saving grace. Most importantly, an insight gained during my time with Aspen Elementary students was to plan a couple extra activities you won't have time to get to, but in the event something changes and you find yourself with more student time, it's that much easier to keep calm and carry on. Through reflective practice, I took what I learned and applied it to the L.A. Carson lesson plans and intend to do so with future lesson plans. Lastly, science practices, developmentally appropriate instruction, and place as context for teaching will be discussed in connection to the educational approach in the following examples. Presentation Day. Leading up to the research, both Edith Bowen and L.A. Carson were introduced to elements of the science circle broken into sections and woven into the daily activities. Insights here would be to have started earlier, and benchmarks of implementation would be the L.A. Carson's Research Day, where they really seemed to get what was expected of them. Basically, teaching everything through the lens of the science circle. Like a broken record, the students pick up on the predictability of our guidance through using the science circle. In Lander High School, I found the thin line between developmentally appropriate instruction, timing in the day, and vocab. Near the end of the day, I used a research proposal from UW that referred to E. coli issues relevant to this area. I lost them during this activity, but would still use it again, just with more support for scientific vocabulary and perhaps break it down into a synopsis of the key parts I find relevant. Lander is a notable example to bring home the final developmental emphasis, place as a context for teaching. Going to Sinks Canyon, both with Arapahoe Middle and Lander High School, showing youth the connection rather than discussing concepts of terrain in the classroom make for a sticky mental device to ensure knowledge retention. Finally, L.A. Carson having them on the Kelly campus to talk about adaptations, astronomy, and the many other lessons rooted in the themes of the day, place as a context for teaching, goes without saying. A truly transformative and memorable experience. And I'd like to close with a special thank you to our instructors. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Emily.